Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Podcast, a show committed to bringing you insights from thought leaders shaping the real estate industry. In each episode, we'll dive into conversations with industry experts and local insiders, all aimed at helping you thrive in an ever-changing real estate market, continuing the legacy that Bruce Norris created, sharing valuable knowledge, and empowering you on your real estate journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newcomer, this is your go-to source for insider tips, market trends, and success strategies. Here's your host, Craig Evans.
Hey everybody, we are super excited to be on today. We have got a great guest with us today. It is a recent friend of mine that has become a good acquaintance and hopefully longtime friend. Jason Medley is the CEO, although he says the chief connector of Collective Genius. He is the founder and chief connector of that. So Jason is the founder of Collective Genius, which is a real estate mastermind group that brings together 200 of the nation's top real estate investors on a quarterly basis to brainstorm about housing, market changes, and to share their most intimate secrets, strategies, and resources and systems. Jason has over 21 years experience in real estate, where he has partnered in over 2,600 multifamily doors and funded more than 1,500 loans. Through this sharing, the members of the Collective Genius thrive regardless of housing market changes or economic fluctuations and live life freely on their own terms and by their own rules. Jason, man, it is great to have you on. I know, you know, it's been a little bit since we've seen each other, but I'm grateful for you jumping on just before the end of the year here. And listen, I want to say also, I really appreciate you guys and Collective Genius sponsoring I Survive Real Estate, again this year. That was a big event, had a really good turnout for everything that went on there, and Make-A-Wish of OC RIA. So super great. And honestly, I appreciate the invite to your event up in Tampa this year. Just 4 weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. Great event. It was really cool to see how you guys do things and what you do and how you put it on. So, Jason, listen, I want to jump in. I want to talk about Collective Genius, but for those that don't know who you are or know about Collective Genius, if it's okay, I'd really love to dive in and kind of get your story and your background, if that's okay.
Yeah, brother, let's do it. I'm ready. Hopefully we can have some fun and get some folks some worthwhile information.
Absolutely.
We're speaking of worthwhile information. We are that might be some dated information. We are not at 200 members or 200 investors. We are hopefully in January this year. We will approach and cross the 700 mark. So
wow.
I made the dig into where you got that. We might have some dated info out there.
I was going to say that's what we were given on the bio of that. So, because I'll be honest, I thought you were up over 600 already. I thought so, but
700. You know what? We may have sent you a bio that needs updating.
Well, like I say, at the end of the day, my goal was getting you on here and let's get information directly to people. So listen, you're originally from Kentucky, if I remember right. We sat down at dinner and got to share each other's kind of life stories. If I remember, you're from Kentucky. Tell us where in Kentucky.
Originally from Louisville, Kentucky, for about the first 24-ish years of my life, and then in Tampa, Florida for about the next 30.
So growing up in Kentucky, I mean, what was it like for you living there?
Kentucky's a great town, man. It's, everybody has their connotation of it, but Louisville's a pretty good sized city. I live in Tampa now. It's probably pretty relative to the same size. But of course there was some teasing going on when I came down here. Everybody wanted to know if I drove down a covered wagon, and they were surprised that I had all my teeth and all that kind of stuff. But, no, it was good growing up. I was, single, only child. My mom raised me from the time I was probably about a year old. I had a great family, aunts, uncles, had a wonderful, wonderful mother, who really kind of knew the right balance between love and discipline. And on any given day, they could be one and the same. But born and raised, or went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, and then to a small college after that. And, growing up there, I think I kind of started my entrepreneurial journey, or I should say my mother required I start my entrepreneurial journey at about 12 years old. And I remember her telling me, I'm going to give you three things. One of them you were born with. I'm going to get you a lawnmower, a weed eater, and you got a set of knuckles. And so get to knocking, right? And but sure enough, that turned out to be kind of my entry into being an entrepreneur at 12 years old. And I was, before you know it, I was cutting 20 lawns a week and knocking down $400 in cash, which at the time was great. And then by the time I was 16, I had some money to get a car. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about me and growing up.
So, I'll be honest, Jason, we talked through a lot of stuff. I did not know that was your first gig. I don't know if you and I have talked about that. That's literally, I was 12. I started cutting grass. I actually hired 4 of my friends within the first 3 weeks and were working for me. So it's
smarter than me. I was still pushing the lawnmower for a while.
Well, listen, I learned quickly I was going to bring my guys some Fritos and some Gatorade to keep them going, right? I had to bribe them to keep going.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about is I'm a better COO than a CEO, and I think that just shined the light on it, right? I was pushing the lawnmower, and you already had your buddies working for you.
Well, listen, so all right, so you're 12, you're cutting grass, and getting calluses on the knuckles of knocking on doors, right?
Yeah.
But as you're doing that, what at that point did you have an idea? I mean, were you already looking ahead, saying, "Hey, this is what I want to do"? Right? Was it the typical I want to be a fireman or an astronaut, or were you already looking at things saying, "Hey, I want to do this"?
I don't know. At 12 years old, I was probably like, "Damn, it's hot outside. I'd be playing grass." But I did have my eye on the prize, which is, my mom was a single mom and she was an assistant. And so, she didn't make much money. So I knew if I wanted to have a car, that I was going to have to, figure that out. And so, I'd say I did have my eye on the prize, but as far as knowing I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I think that probably came a little bit later in my life, where when you combine that experience with when my mom got remarried, I don't know, I guess I was probably 14 or 15 years old at the time, and she remarried an entrepreneur, and just time with him and seeing what he had accomplished, and kind of him pouring into me, and my mom did too. It wasn't just him, but that you're capable of doing whatever you put your mind to, and helping me understand that I could pave my own way, and if I was willing to pay the price.
Yep.
But that I could kind of create and craft my own future. And so I'd say that kind of overall, overarching thought about entrepreneurship probably came at 14, 15 years old. And, that's something that has for sure. I mean, I started out after, when I didn't go right into true entrepreneurship. When I graduated college, I went to work for corporate for 5 or 6 years. Had a nice base salary and a company car and all that jazz. But before long, I realized when I know where my paycheck's coming from every day, I'm not near as good as when I got to get up and hunt
and hustle. Yeah. So. There's so many people that are, especially coming into the investing world, right? That they're hustling a 9 to 5. They're trying to grind through that, trying to make that determination of, how do I get out of this and get into doing my own and being, be able to live freely in what I do. I've heard so many people through the years as I've talked to them about this, that just, it's like they don't know how to get out of what they're currently in, because they think, oh, well, I would have to make more. I'd have to do this, So with that, I mean, what was your first job? You're saying you're coming out of college. I mean, what'd you study in college? What was the background of that? And what was your first job that you had?
Yeah. My first degree in college was in partying, and then my second was in economics. So I have two degrees.
Yep.
All kidding aside, I was like a straight A student until my freshman year of college, and then it was downhill. I graduated. I went in my senior year on academic probation, had a 1.8 GPA, and if I didn't get it above 2.0 that last semester, I was going to be coming back. So, but I just really never worried about grades. That was the influence that my stepfather had on me. He just kind of taught me that, if you got the grit and the grind and the vision, that none of that stuff's eventually going to matter. And so I just kind of disconnected from it a little bit. And my mom was super strict. And so when I got away from home, I lit it on fire, to say the least. But I was still very driven. I just didn't care about school, so I was still driven. And then, I started going to job fairs in my senior year and sending out resumes. And one thing my mom had always taught me was follow up. Right? Fortune's in the follow up. Then I say follow up. And so my first job was with a decent sized regional company called PB&S Chemical, and they didn't manufacture chemicals, but they sold chemicals, and anything and everything has chemicals in it. From I just jumped out of the shower, whether it's my shampoo or the paint that's on this bookshelf behind me, or you name it, the gel in your hair and the stuff in your toothpaste, everything. The chlorine in your pool, everything has chemicals in it. So that was my first position in outside sales. And but I had my eyes set on, at the time, what I thought was what I really wanted to do, which was work for a pharmaceutical company. And that's about the time when that transcript, that 1.8 up until last semester, senior year, came back hot and go there. So I started applying for pharmaceutical companies, and eventually I met a recruiter at Johnson & Johnson. J&J has hundreds of companies, and they have recruiters that recruit across a multitude of their platforms. And so I met a recruiter. I'll never forget her. She's just like, I could tell you're a talented kid. You're going to run some hiccups with that transcript, but if you stay diligent, we're going to get you a position. And so that's what happened. Stay diligent, probably interview with 7 or 8 different companies with Johnson & Johnson, and ended up going to work for their division, Ortho McNeil. And, had a good gig there, but I just ended up really, the thing I thought I wanted is actually something I ended up despising. I was wet behind, 20-something years old, wet behind the ears, trying to tell doctors what kind of medicine they should prescribe. And, what I really felt like was an overpaid, overdressed sample dropper offer for these positions. And so that's at the point where I realized, like, man, if I got a nice steady check coming in, company car, I'm good, but that's really kind of when I had a big pivotal shift in my life. I got very, very, very sick, like almost kicking the bucket sick in my later 20s. And knowing that, so I was on short-term disability. That's how sick I was. And so knowing that, I was on short-term disability and still had a verifiable paycheck, I was refinancing my home and taking a little cash out to try and figure out what was next for me, if I was going to stay, if I was going to go. But, it was very apparent they wanted me to come back and sprint and run. And I just wasn't healthy enough to do that. So during the middle of that refinance, this young lad pulls up to the house in a black on black 911 Carrera Turbo. And he might have been a year or two younger than me, or at that time I was probably 28, right? And I said, man, how'd you get that? And he said, well, doing mortgages. And I was like, you got an empty chair over there at the shop, you know? And soon enough, man, he said, I don't really know, but let me check with the guy that I work for. And he checked with him, and, they call short-term disability short-term for a reason, because it only lasts so long. And I was coming to the end of that, and I was just not myself, and couldn't imagine going from being off for months and being sick a very long time back into a cubicle. And so he told me they had a position, and that's when I left corporate America and went into a straight 100% commission job, and went from steady paycheck, steady Eddie, to get up and hunt every single day. And I figured out at that point that that's what brought out the best in me.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you make that switch?
That was in my late 20s. It was in my late 20s. Yeah, that was in my late 20s. And I had a bunch of surgery and was just trying to get back up on my 2 feet. I was wiped out physically. I weighed, I think, 115 pounds, and I walk around normally at, about 180.
Right.
So I was just, I was just trying to get some momentum.
Well, so that would have been, because if I remember right, you and I are like right at within months of the same age of each other. So that would have been what, mid 2000s or so?
No, that was,
oh no, wait a minute. That would have been late, or probably mid 90s, actually, late 90s.
Late 90s. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I was in the hospital on 9/11. That's how I know it was the late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was late 90s.
So now, how long were you in mortgage before you really started switching? Because what I'm trying to get to is now you've come into mortgage, and so you're starting to dance into real estate. Where were you at when 08 hit and that whole crash of everything? What were you doing at that point?
So I started my retail mortgage business in the early 2000s, early 2000s. Thought I was the business, baby. Thought I was the business. The market was booming. There was tons of new construction in Florida combined with low interest rates. So there was new construction loans plus all the refinances. Like, man, I was cool. I was like, I know exactly what's going on. I personally have got it all figured out. And then, bam, right? Just, you said the magic four numbers, right? Where were you at in 2008? Everybody knows where they were at, right?
Yep.
And so I was doing my thing that I thought I had all figured out. And then, the markets go up the fastest, come down the fastest when things like that happen. And so I was running my own mortgage business, and man, everything at that point came off the rails. I lost my business. I lost my marriage, I had made a ton of money during that time, but I was blowing it, young and young. Had no financial discipline. Making money is a skill set. Keeping it is a discipline. Somebody write that down. That's the lesson I learned from that. And so in 2008, I had to do a reset and went through a very horrible, going from on top of the world, running a decent sized little retail mortgage shop, and to losing that, my marriage, short selling I had to hit the reset button, and went through a pretty low time during that time, like at the bottom of the questioning who I was and what I was made of and what my future looked like. And so yeah, pretty rough spot in my life for sure.
And I think that's part of why I want to go into it, because we haven't got to talk, but I've had a similar story. I mean, we had, and I think it's interesting when you talk to people that have success. To me, those that are often the most successful know how to come out of a downfall.
Yeah.
They know how to recover. They know how to pivot. They know how to work through something that slapped them in the face and they weren't ready for. But they figured out how to, us old country boys know that saying of, they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and kept going, right? I mean, they figured out how do you clean yourself up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those things aren't easy all the time, you know? So,
Right.
Jason, what do you think is the biggest mistake? Because social media, all the highs, we always talk about that, right? Those are the easy things, right? What do you think is the biggest mistake that you've ever made in real estate, or maybe the biggest obstacle you've ever had to overcome? However you want to play it, but I want people to see that as much as success we've had, it's not always, we don't always get it right.
Yeah. I'd say and we can go back 2 or 3 minutes and reference the biggest mistake that I think I made was prior to 2008, in that, it was kind of my first foray into running my own company. And I didn't understand, nor did I appreciate, that sentiment and momentum were running that market, right? Like, I thought it was because I actually knew what I was doing. Yes, humor me for a moment there. But no, legitimately, I was like, I got this. I know what I'm doing, right? And the reality of it is I was just in the way. Now, we're coming out of that right now, right? Like, we hit the bottom, 2008, 2009, 2010, and we've had a 12, 13-year run of, in the last 24 months, there's been a bunch of young bucks who had to go home because they thought they knew what they were doing, and then the market shifted, and they were like, "Oh, all right." I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know how to run a business. I just happen to be shooting fish in a barrel.
That's right.
And so, that's probably the biggest mistake that I made. And also not understanding what I referenced earlier is that making money is a skill set, keeping it as a discipline. They are not one and the same.
That's right.
And I didn't realize at that point in my life, I was just kind of burning it as I went. Whereas now, I am very rigid financially with the disciplines required to keep money, not just make money. And so, definitely, the biggest mistake is thinking I was responsible for what was going on. That's my biggest mistake.
So coming out of that, and you look to where now you're, what do we say? We're 51 or 52 years old. What?
Something like that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
something like that.
The 30th anniversary of 20.
Yes. Plus 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's us guys sitting here. I can't ask a lady that. We can't talk about that when a lady's on the show, right?
Right.
So, but you're coming out of that. You think you're God reincarnated in the finance world, in the mortgage world, and 2008 slaps us into reality. Mm-hmm. So you started Collective Genius. You've recreated all of it. You've created all this. If you look at Jason Medley now, what do you say is your specialty in real estate? Like I say, I want to move into Collective Genius, but what do you say is your specialty in real estate itself?
Yeah. If I had to pin that down, I would say I underwrite people first and deals second.
Okay. Tell me about that. Because I think that's one of those, especially with a lot of young investors. Mm-hmm. They don't get to hear stuff like this.
Well, yeah, and I'm trying to think of how to frame it for a young investor, because you said, what is my superpower, however you reference it now?
Yeah, your specialty, yeah.
Yeah, specialty, yeah. But where I'm at in my career, I know so many people, and I get to watch them from either a short distance or from afar as regards to who they are, how they operate their businesses, and so forth. And so I look at who they are as a human being, right? Who they are as a man, as a woman, as a mother, as a father, as a spouse, as a leader. And that's equally as important, because here's the thing: in real estate, stuff goes wrong. I was going to use another choice word besides stuff, but you guys get the point, right? And you have to know that when things go wrong, the person you're doing business with is going to handle it the right way, because you don't ever know a cockroach is a cockroach until they got their back in the corner.
That's right.
You don't know. Boy, they can scurry around.
That's it.
Yeah. And so I think that is, for somebody new starting out, and again, I'm on the lending and equity side, so I don't really I don't really do the physical side of the physical asset side of the business, but I think you just really need to know who you're doing business with at the best level you can, which is when you're just breaking into an industry is somewhat tough versus, the old guys like us who know a lot of people. But that's the thing I think I would probably check on if you're lending money or if you're going to flip a house and hire some contractors. I would, get some references and, don't just ask like, hey, did you make money with this person or did they finish the job on time? Like, how did you feel about them as a human being? Is to me every bit as important of how they perform from a business perspective, because that's great. You could be in 13 years momentum on the market, which we're coming off of, and then things start to go wrong. I need to know who you are as a human being.
That's right.
At that point. And so that would probably be what I would consider my specialty, if you will.
And I think that's especially for young investors, I think it's such a crucial process for them to understand, is because listen, we're always looking at the asset. Is there equity? Where does that asset stand? How does that roll? What do the numbers look like? You got to know your numbers. And we talked a lot about that at your last event. But I think that people, just as you're talking about, Jason, that they forget and undervalue, if you will, the relationship with people that matter. Like you say, knowing that contractor that when something goes wrong, because it's construction and it will, are they still going to be there? Right? That lender that promises you, hey, go get the deal and we'll lend. Can they close? Can they get to the closing table?
An example of that is, let's say you're looking at rehabbing a house and you're just getting started and you pencil it out and you're like, well, I think I can make like 50 grand on this thing. And then you've got two contractors, one that's going to charge you 80 and one that's going to charge you, 70. And you think, well, I could use that 10 grand, right? But if that one that's going to charge you a little bit more has a proven track record and is a pillar of an individual that you feel like, man, I just really get a good feeling about this person, you probably be better off and, taking the extra 10K hit and because it's always more than the money, right? Like if you get a rehab that goes wrong, it's more than the 10 extra grand, right? Like it's the headache and the contractor left and you just want to pull your hair out and it took twice as long and it went over budget and it's more than just the number that it ends up costing. It's all the suffering.
That's right.
In between. And so, but those are really hard decisions to make when you're trying to create momentum and you don't have it.
Yep.
You will make bad decisions and sacrifice your gut sometimes. And, I'm not saying it's easy.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for part 1 with Jason Medley. Make sure and tune in next week.
For more information on hard money loans, trust deed investing, and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For more information on passive investing through the DBL Capital Real Estate Investment Fund, please visit dblcapital.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under the California DRE license 01219911, Florida Mortgage Lender license 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard money tab.